I'm 30 years old, and the moment I stopped being a daughter in my parents' eyes was the moment I asked them to help save my body instead of saving their favorite child again. A week earlier, they had emptied their savings to drag my brother out of jail after he got arrested in the middle of the night. By the time I called, the money was gone, the sympathy was gone, and apparently, so was any reason to care whether I walked into an operating room or kept living in pain. I was standing in my apartment in Savannah with one hand pressed against my side, listening to my father breathe into the phone like I was the one inconveniencing him. Then he said it, flat and cold, like he was choosing between replacing a tire and throwing out leftovers. If one of you has to go, better you than him. My mother didn't gasp. She didn't defend me. She just said, "Honey, you need to learn how to take care of yourself." I remember smiling even though my vision had gone blurry. "Thank you," I told them. "Now I know exactly what your kindness looks like." They thought that was the end of it. They thought I would cry, beg, maybe borrow from someone else and then crawl back into my old place as the family's dependable backup plan. What they didn't know was that for years I had been the quiet pair of hands holding up far more of their life than they ever admitted out loud. 1 week later, something I did sent them into full panic. My mother was screaming through the phone. My father sounded like he could barely breathe. For the first time in my life, they were terrified of what I might do next. Before I tell you exactly how that happened, what's the weather like where you are right now? How's your mood as this story is unfolding? I wasn't born dramatic, spiteful, or hungry for revenge. I became that version of myself, one small humiliation at a time, in a family where love always came with conditions and forgiveness always flowed toward one person. My parents, Elaine and Douglas Pierce, owned a marine supply company outside Savannah that sold equipment to charter boats, shrimp crews, and private docks up and down the Georgia coast. On paper, it was my father's business. In real life, it ran because somebody had to keep the licenses current, the compliance forms accurate, the commercial insurance renewed, the payroll taxes filed, and the endless stack of vendor contracts from swallowing them whole. That somebody was me. I worked full-time as a preservation specialist for a maritime museum downtown, restoring ship logs, maps, letters, and navigation records too fragile to survive careless hands. It wasn't glamorous, but I loved it. There was something deeply honest about working with damaged things and helping them hold together. The irony was that I spent my weekdays preserving history and my nights quietly preserving my family's present. My parents liked to tell people I was the organized one, which sounded flattering until you realized it really meant unpaid labor. My brother Travis, on the other hand, was 33 years old and still somehow everybody's emergency. Travis never held the same job for more than a year. He was always launching something, flipping something, chasing some big move. 1 year it was custom boat wraps. Then it was online parts resale. Then it was a charter partnership that somehow collapsed before the first season ended. Every time he crashed, my parents called it bad luck. Every time I stepped in, they called it family. By the time I hit 30, I had filed more forms for Pierce Marine Outfitters than some paid compliance managers do in 5 years. My father would dump folders in my lap with a grunt and say, "You're better at that office nonsense than I am." My mother would forward me emails with subject lines screaming, "Final notice or signature required," and then text, "Can you just handle this, sweet girl? You know how your father gets." Travis was worse because he had learned the family language perfectly. He never demanded. He performed desperation. "Maddie, you're the only one with a brain in this family. Maddie, just help me this one time. Maddie, when I'm back on my feet, you'll never have to worry again." I worried every time. For him, for my parents, for the business, for the house, for the fact that my name was on more documents than anybody knew. Years earlier, when my father's credit took a hit and their insurance carrier threatened to drop them, I'd signed as the registered compliance contact on several company renewals because my father begged and said it was temporary. Temporary in my family meant permanent until I screamed. I never screamed. I just fixed. Then my health started sliding. At first it was pain on and off, then episodes bad enough that I'd fold over at work and pretend I just needed air. After months of scans, blood work, and appointments, a specialist told me I needed surgery. Not optional eventually, necessary soon. I still remember sitting in my car outside the clinic gripping the steering wheel, not because the diagnosis shocked me, but because my first thought was not fear. It was money. I had savings, but not enough. Not after years of lending, covering, and quietly plugging holes that weren't mine. I called my mother first, because a delusional piece of me still believed a medical emergency might finally outweigh Travis's latest disaster. She answered on speaker, and I could hear my father in the background asking whether the bail bondsman had called back. That was how I learned Travis had been arrested the night before, after drunkenly shoving a deputy outside a waterfront bar, and then resisting arrest like an idiot who thought consequences were for other people. By noon, my parents had drained what was left of their savings to get him out. By 2 o'clock, I became the selfish daughter with bad timing. I told my mother I needed help covering my surgery deposit. She didn't even ask how much. "Not now," she said. "Your brother needs us." I said, "Mom, I need surgery." Then my father took the phone and delivered the sentence that burned the last soft part of me clean away. "If one of you has to go, better you than him." There are some moments that don't just hurt. They rearrange you. I stood there in my apartment after the call ended, one hand still gripping the phone, and understood that no future version of this family would ever choose me first unless choosing me cost them nothing. I could have broken down right then. I could have called around, asked friends for loans, begged a hospital billing office, and kept acting like this was just another terrible thing I had to endure quietly. Instead, for the first time in my life, I got still. Really still. Because beneath the shock and grief, something sharper had begun to rise. My parents thought they had chosen Travis over my life. What they had actually done was remind me where every weak beam in their house was hidden. The morning after that call, I woke up with pain in my side and a clarity I had never had before. Usually when my family hurt me, I spent days trying to translate it into something softer. Maybe they were stressed. Maybe Travis was really in danger. Maybe my father didn't mean it the way it sounded. This time, I didn't waste energy editing reality into something kinder. He had meant it exactly the way it sounded. My mother had agreed, and I had spent years keeping afloat people who would let me sink without blinking. I called in sick to the museum, made tea I didn't drink, and opened my laptop at the kitchen table. I didn't start with revenge. I started with inventory. Every login, every state filing, every insurance portal, every tax calendar reminder, every vendor account, every renewal notice, every spreadsheet I maintained for Pierce Marine Outfitters because my father claimed he did business better on the water than on a screen. What I found made me feel sick in a totally different way. I wasn't just helping them. I was embedded. My personal email sat as the primary contact on multiple compliance records. My phone number was attached to 2 state notices. One major commercial insurer had me listed as the operating compliance liaison because years ago my father needed a clean paperwork history to keep their rates from exploding. The system had formed so slowly I never stepped back and saw the whole trap. If I disappeared tomorrow, they wouldn't just miss my emotional labor. They'd lose access, oversight, reminders, and protection all at once. That thought should have scared me. Instead, it steadied me. Around noon, My best friend Naomi Reed came over with iced soup in a thermos, and the kind of face people wear when they already know the truth from your voice. Naomi worked as an aviation mechanic at the regional airport and had exactly zero patience for the "but family" argument when family used it like a weapon. I told her everything, from the surgery deposit to the bail money to the sentence my father threw at me like I was disposable. She set the thermos down on my counter and said, very calmly, "Then stop saving them." I laughed because it felt too simple. I can't just disappear from the middle of all of it. Naomi leaned back in her chair. Why not? Because the business would implode. And? I stared at her. Naomi. No, seriously, Maddie, and? She pointed around my apartment as if the air itself was evidence. You need surgery. They chose his handcuffs over your body. Why are you still protecting their convenience? That question hit harder than my father's cruelty, because it forced me to face my own role in it. I had spent so long being useful that I mistook usefulness for worth. If Pierce Marine Outfitters stumbled without me, I took that as proof I had to keep carrying it. Naomi saw it differently. You're not burning their business down, she said. You're just stepping back from the fire they keep asking you to stand in. We sat there for 2 hours making a list, not petty fantasies, concrete realities. I would notify them in writing that I was withdrawing from non-employee responsibilities attached to the company. I would remove my cards from any accounts where I had been floating temporary costs. I would export every document, every deadline, every existing record, and send them one clean package so nobody could claim sabotage. I would also contact the state licensing office and insurer, not to accuse anyone of crimes, but to formally update the authorized contact structure because I would no longer be serving in that role. Naomi looked at me over my laptop and said, "That alone is enough to make them panic." She was right, because this was never about drama. It was about access. My parents had built their lives assuming access to me would never end. They used my competence the way other people use electricity, invisible until it goes out. The next 3 days felt surreal. I went to work, moved carefully between displays and archive boxes, smiled at visitors, and meanwhile built the most meticulous exit plan of my life. At night, after pain medication dulled the edge in my side, I drafted handoff documents more thorough than anything I had ever prepared for my own job. State renewal dates, insurer contacts, vendor payment calendars, payroll tax deadlines, permit numbers, vessel supply contracts, marina agreements, everything. I created folders labeled clearly enough that a stranger could understand them. Then I wrote one short message to my parents and Travis in the family group chat. I will no longer be managing any business, financial, or compliance matters for Pierce Marine Outfitters. I'm sending everything you need by Friday. After that, all responsibility returns to ownership. Travis responded first, because of course he did. LMAO, you're really doing this over one argument? My mother texted. Do not make emotional decisions when you're upset. My father called twice, then sent, "We'll talk in person. Don't start something stupid." I never answered. That silence wasn't weakness. It was the first boundary I had ever held without apologizing. Friday morning, 1 week after they bailed Travis out and left me twisting in pain, I sent the email. 17 attachments, a summary document, a formal withdrawal notice. No insults, no begging, no theatrics. Just facts. By noon, I'd removed my cards from 3 vendor accounts and 2 utility autopays tied to company operations. At 2, I submitted my withdrawal as compliance contact to the insurer and state portal, both of which automatically triggered follow-up review requests to ownership. At 4, my mother called me 12 times in a row. I let every call ring out. At 4:26 p.m., she left the voicemail that told me the panic had finally arrived. She was sobbing so hard I almost didn't recognize her voice. Madeline, what did you do? Why are they saying coverage has to be re-verified? Why are they asking for direct owner confirmation? Call me right now. I sat in my parked car outside the museum, listened once, and finally understood something I wish I had known years earlier. People who call you dramatic when you are in pain will call you dangerous the second you stop making their lives easy. The real explosion came the next morning. I was halfway through a shift in the conservation lab when my phone buzzed with my father's name. Then again. Then my mother. Then Travis. Then a number I recognized from the company's insurance office. I stepped into the hallway and finally listened to the newest voicemail from my father. He was furious, but underneath it I could hear fear cracking through. The insurer says if we don't update this documentation immediately, they can't confirm active coverage for next week's delivery contract. What the hell did you tell them? What I told them was the truth. That I no longer served in that role. That ownership needed to designate and verify an authorized contact. That I could not remain listed on corporate compliance matters for an operation I did not control and would no longer be managing. None of that was sabotage. It was just adulthood without free labor. I texted back one sentence. I told them I'm no longer your compliance contact. My father called instantly. I answered because by then I wanted to hear it. You're tanking your own family over hurt feelings, he barked. Do you understand what this could cost us? Do you understand what surgery costs? I asked. Silence, then heavier breathing. Don't do that. Do what? Make this about that call. I leaned against the museum's stairwell wall and let the anger settle into something colder. It is about that call. It's about every call, every form, every late-night panic you dumped in my lap while telling the world Travis was your future, and I was just handy. He switched tactics fast, the way he always did when intimidation failed. We can fix the surgery money later. Later, like when? I asked. After Travis starts another business? After Mom misses more appointments I'm supposed to manage? After you forget another filing deadline and act shocked it exists? His voice hardened. You're being vindictive. No, I said. I'm being unavailable. Then I hung up. That afternoon, Naomi drove me to my pre-op consultation because the pain had started radiating into my back, and I didn't trust myself behind the wheel for long. In the waiting room, while other people flipped through magazines and checked their phones, I watched my own family melt down in real time through text previews. My mother. The marina won't release the vendor hold without updated insurance docs. Travis. Dad says this is all because you're bitter. My father. You need to come to the office now. Then the message that made me laugh out loud in a room full of strangers. Family should come before pride. Naomi glanced over and muttered, That from the man who picked jailbird over surgery? I nodded. She squeezed my shoulder. Then let him drown in his own slogan. But the truth was, I wasn't calm. I was shaking under the surface. There is a huge difference between imagining consequences and hearing them arrive. A part of me still wanted to drive straight to Pierce Marine Outfitters, fix the forms, smooth everything over, and step back into the role they'd carved out for me. Not because they deserved it, because I had been conditioned to believe collapse was my fault if I could have prevented it. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, staring at my laptop while rain tapped against the windows. I opened the handoff files I'd sent them. Everything was there. Every number, every contact, every deadline. I had not abandoned them. I had handed them back their own lives. If they were in crisis now, it was because ownership required work they had always outsourced to affection, guilt, and my silence. The next morning, my mother showed up at my apartment unannounced. She looked worse than I'd ever seen her. Makeup streaked, hair pinned back carelessly, oversized sunglasses failing to hide how swollen her eyes were. The second I opened the door, she tried to push past me. We need to talk inside. I blocked the doorway. No. We can talk here. She stared at me like I was a stranger. Madeline, please stop this. Your father is losing his mind. Travis is making everything worse. We just need you to help for a few days until this settles. A few days was the family phrase that built prisons. No, I said. You have every document you need. She lowered her voice. Honey, they're reviewing coverage because you pulled out without warning. I almost laughed. I sent a full handoff and formal notice. That is warning. She pressed a hand to her chest like she might cry again, but the tears didn't move me the way they used to. You know your father cannot handle this administrative stuff. Then maybe he shouldn't own a business that depends on it. That landed. Her face went flat for a moment, the softness dropping away. This is because of Travis. No, I said. This is because of both of you. She tried one last angle. He made a mistake. He's your brother. She? I stepped forward just enough that she had to look directly at me. And I'm your daughter. The one you told to take care of herself? She opened her mouth, but there was nothing left to say, because both of us knew the truth. She had chosen. My father had chosen. Travis had always been the son worth rescuing, and I had always been the daughter expected to endure. She left without hugging me, without apologizing, without asking how my pain was. An hour later, the panic got louder. My father sent a photo of a hold notice attached to a dockside delivery agreement. Travis sent voice notes cursing me out for making everyone look stupid. Then, just before sunset, my mother called again, and this time she was screaming. Not crying. Screaming. What did you do? How could you? I let her wear herself out before answering. Why? I said quietly. You'd better start praying. I didn't plan that line in advance. It just came out. Calm and ice cold, because for the first time in my life, they were the ones facing a future they couldn't control. I hung up, set the phone down, and realized my hands weren't shaking anymore. The fear had moved. It no longer lived in me. It lived in them. 2 days later, my father demanded a family meeting at the office. He texted that I had until 6 o'clock to stop acting like an enemy and come explain myself. I ignored him for an hour, then decided I would go for one reason only. I was tired of being discussed like a malfunction instead of a person. Naomi insisted on driving me. You are not walking into that building alone while you're waiting on surgery and your brother is spiraling, she said. She parked across the street from Pierce Marine Outfitters and told me she'd be 10 feet away if voices started rising. I believed her, which helped. The office sat behind the retail floor, through a warped door that never fully shut, surrounded by shelves of rope, marine radios, flare kits, and weathered catalog binders. It smelled like dust, salt, and old stress. My father was already inside, pacing. My mother sat at the desk with a folder open in front of her like she thought paperwork itself might shame me back into line. Travis lounged against the file cabinet with the arrogant slouch of a man who had never truly been made to pay for anything. He looked less like somebody recently bailed out and more like somebody bored by other people's crisis. That alone almost sent me over the edge. My father started the second I stepped in. Sit down. I stayed standing. Say what you need to say. He pointed at the folder. Because of you, our insurer flagged the commercial policy. Because of you, the marina delayed the McCreary order. Because of you, the state portal is asking for direct owner compliance designation in the middle of our busiest quarter. Because of me? I repeated. No. Because of years of letting me do your job. Travis rolled his eyes. Jesus, Maddie, you act like you built the whole business. I turned to him so fast even he stopped talking. I kept it legal, I said. That's more than you've ever done for it. My mother tried to soften things. Nobody is saying you didn't help. Help. The word hit me like a slap. Help is what someone does once. This was labor, years of it. My father slammed both hands on the desk. You don't get to come in here and talk like we exploited you. Then what would you call it? I asked. Because I can tell you what it felt like. It felt like being the person who kept your permits clean, your insurance current, your tax deadlines met, your vendor files organized, and your son's messes contained, while all of you acted like I should be grateful to be useful. Travis shoved off the cabinet. I never asked you to be obsessed. Naomi, visible through the office window outside, actually laughed in disbelief. I ignored him. No, you just asked me to fix everything every time you wrecked it. My mother finally stood. Madeline, please, let's lower our voices. I looked at her, and something inside me broke in a totally different way. You still haven't asked how I'm doing. Silence. My father looked away first. Travis shifted uncomfortably. My mother blinked. What? My surgery, I said. My body, my pain. The thing I called you about before Dad said it was better if I died than Travis suffered consequences. My father's face hardened again. I did not say die. You said, if one of you has to go, better you than him. He said nothing because there was nothing to say. My mother took one shaky breath. We were under pressure. So was I. We didn't mean, you meant enough. Travis crossed his arms. Are you seriously blowing up the family business over one ugly sentence? I stepped closer to him than I ever had in my life. No, Travis. I'm stepping back because I finally believed it. He laughed, but it sounded thinner now. You think Dad's paperwork matters more than family? No. I think family should have mattered before I needed surgery. That room had heard 1,000 arguments over money, inventory, vendors, and debt. But I don't think it had ever heard anyone say the real thing out loud. My father's face shifted from anger to something more dangerous. Humiliation. What do you want? He asked finally. There it was. Not what do you need? Not what did we do? What do you want? As if this were a negotiation instead of a wound. I answered honestly. I want out. My mother looked like she'd been slapped. Out of what? All of it. The business, the silent obligations, the emergency calls, the assumption that my life is yours to spend. My father scoffed. You're being melodramatic. No, I said. I'm being late. Then I told them what my attorney had already started preparing. I wasn't just withdrawing from informal duties. I wanted my name removed from every active corporate compliance record, every policy, every filing, every borrowed piece of responsibility that had been attached to me because I was easier to use than to respect. If that caused delays, owner review, or requalification, that was part of restoring reality, not punishing them. My father stared at me like I had become someone unrecognizable. Maybe I had. My mother sat back down slowly, as if her knees had weakened. Travis muttered, "This is insane." I looked at him and said the quiet part he'd avoided his whole life. No. Insane is getting arrested and still being the safest investment in this family. Nobody had a comeback for that. I walked out before they could regroup and throw fresh blame at me. Naomi opened the passenger door before I reached the car. How bad? She asked. I buckled in carefully and stared through the windshield at the faded company sign my father loved more than most people. Worse than I thought, I said. Then, after a second, better too. Because for the first time, I had spoken to them in the language of truth instead of survival. And once truth is said out loud in a room like that, it doesn't go back in the walls. My surgery happened 3 days later. Not because my family helped, because Naomi bullied me into applying for a hospital payment plan. My museum supervisor quietly advanced me some leave pay, and I finally did what my mother told me to do in the cruelest possible way. I took care of myself. The morning of the procedure, I expected to feel fear about the operating room. Instead, What hit me hardest was grief. Not for my body. For the family I kept trying to resurrect in my head. The one where a mother stays, a father protects, and a brother feels shame instead of entitlement. That family was never coming. After surgery, pain blurred the first day into fragments of white lights, blankets, a nurse adjusting my IV, Naomi's voice telling me not to move like an idiot. My parents texted once. My mother. Heard it went okay. My father. We need to revisit business issues when you're back on your feet. Not, are you okay? Not, I'm sorry. Not, we were wrong. Just logistics. That message cured something in me faster than any medication. Recovery gave me too much time to think, which turned out to be useful. While I lay on my couch with careful movements and too much ginger ale, the consequences on their side kept multiplying. The insurer required direct ownership review before confirming continued operational classification. One vendor paused net terms pending updated contact authorization. The marina withheld a high-value order until Pierce Marine Outfitters could prove coverage and signatory alignment. My father left increasingly frantic voicemails blaming me for all of it, but the truth was harsher and simpler. The system was built on one person doing work for free, under the illusion that gratitude would eventually arrive. Once that person stepped away, everything revealed its actual condition. Travis was the first one to crack publicly. He showed up at my apartment one humid evening smelling like cologne and temper, pounding on the door hard enough that Naomi, who'd come by with groceries, reached for her phone before I even stood up. I opened the door because I was tired of being afraid of people who should have loved me. Travis looked at the surgical brace on the nearby chair, glanced at my pale face, and still somehow started with himself. Dad's saying we might lose the McCreary contract. Then Dad should have learned the system he owns, I said. You sound insane, he snapped. You're acting like you're some martyr because Mom and Dad were trying to save me. I stared at him. Do you even hear yourself? I made one mistake. Naomi from the kitchen called out. Getting arrested at 33 is not a teenage mistake. He ignored her and stepped closer. You always hated that they loved me more. That sentence would have gutted me a month earlier. Now it just clarified everything. No, I said. I hated that they taught you that love should cost me. He actually flinched. Good. You think you're punishing them, he said. You're punishing everyone. No, I said. I'm refusing to subsidize the lie. He asked if I wanted him in jail, if I wanted Dad broke, if I wanted Mom sick with stress. It was a parade of consequences he expected me to absorb on command. I told him the same thing I'd finally learned myself. What happens after I step back is not the same thing as what I did to you. He left furious, kicking the railing on the way down the apartment stairs like an overgrown child. 2 days later, my mother called and for the first time sounded old. Not polished, not wounded, not manipulative. Just tired. I don't know how to fix any of this, she admitted. That should have softened me. In another life, it would have. But I had learned to listen for what wasn't said. She still didn't say I'm sorry. She still didn't ask how recovery was going. She wanted help disguised as vulnerability. Then hire people, I said. That's what businesses do when they need labor. She exhaled shakily. We can't afford that right now. You couldn't afford free either, I answered and ended the call. The real turning point came a week later when my attorney emailed an update. During the process of removing my name from certain records, he had uncovered that my father had continued listing me as the active compliance liaison on one renewal even after I had repeatedly told him I wanted out. It wasn't a forged crime thriller twist. It was worse in a more believable way. Routine entitlement. He had simply assumed my consent was permanent because it had always been available before. That discovery made my stomach turn. It also ended the last little thread of guilt I had been carrying. I wasn't overreacting. I had been treated like a tool long enough that ownership itself forgot tools can leave. My attorney's letter that followed was crisp, formal, and devastating. Any continued use of my name, contact information, or implied authorization on business records would be contested immediately. Ownership had to certify all active designations accurately. No more gray area. No more, Maddie handles that. When that letter hit, my father stopped calling for almost 2 full days. The silence felt like weather after a storm, heavy and strange. Then my mother sent a single message. You really were keeping more together than I realized. I stared at it for a long time because it was the closest thing to acknowledgement I had ever received. Not an apology. Not enough. But truth. Finally. In her own words. I didn't respond. Some realizations deserved to sit unanswered. By the end of that week, I could walk a little better. I could stand long enough to cook eggs. I could breathe without bracing for my family to turn every need I had into evidence against me. And something else had shifted too. Revenge, I realized, wasn't the screaming satisfaction I had imagined when my father first said I was the expendable one. It was quieter, colder, more complete. It was watching people meet the weight of responsibilities they had always shoved onto me and realizing I was no longer underneath them. The final collapse didn't happen in one glorious scene. It happened the way real consequences usually do, through accumulation. The McCreary contract eventually went to another supplier after too many delays. My father managed to patch part of the insurance issue by paying more for less favorable terms, which enraged him because money now had to replace what my labor used to do for free. My mother missed 2 medical follow-ups she once claimed she could never keep straight without me, and for the first time I let that be her problem. Travis, stripped of his favorite excuse that everyone else just needed to support him better, burned through another half-baked venture in under 2 months and moved back into my parents' house, which finally made my father see what I had been seeing for years. Not a misunderstood son, a man-sized sinkhole. Word spread quietly around our part of Savannah because marine business communities love gossip even more than they love pretending they don't. People learned Pierce Marine Outfitters had lost key contracts. Vendors tightened terms. My father stopped boasting at the dockside diner. My mother posted less, smiled less, and never again told anybody her family always shows up for each other. About 6 weeks after my surgery, she asked if she could meet me for coffee. I almost said no. Then I realized I wanted to hear what truth sounded like, after comfort had failed her. We met at a quiet place near Forsyth Park on a gray morning that smelled like wet trees and espresso. She looked smaller than I remembered. Not physically, structurally. Like some internal scaffolding had been removed, and she no longer knew how to stand in the shape she used to wear so easily. For a while, she just held her cup and watched steam disappear. Then she said, "Your father still thinks this is all because you're angry." I said nothing. She continued, "I know better now." It wasn't enough, but it was more than she had ever given me. I asked, "Do you?" She nodded once, eyes on the table. "We built our whole life around expecting you to catch what we dropped." There it was. The sentence I had deserved years earlier. She said my surgery should have come first. She said she knew that the moment she saw me at the office and still couldn't stop herself from asking me to fix their mess before asking if I was okay. She said Travis had been allowed to fail upwards so many times none of them could tell the difference anymore between rescuing him and enabling him. I listened because I had wanted those words for so long. But wanting words and trusting them are different things. "Why are you telling me this now?" I asked. She looked up finally. "Because I thought if I waited long enough, you'd come back and make it easier, and now I know you won't." Honest. Brutal. Late. I appreciated the honesty more than any fake apology she could have memorized. My father never gave me that. He sent one stiff text 3 days later. Your mother says I owe you an apology. I'm sorry for how things were said. Passive voice. No ownership. No mention of surgery. No acknowledgement of choosing Travis. It felt exactly like him, even in contrition. Travis never apologized at all. He sent a final message months later asking if I knew anybody who could help him get into logistics consulting. I laughed so hard I almost cried, then blocked his new number. Time did what confrontation couldn't. It made the family mythology impossible to maintain. My parents had to hire actual professionals to do fractions of what I once handled in silence. They spent real money on bookkeeping help, compliance review, and legal cleanup. Every check they wrote was a reminder that I had not been helping a little. I had been carrying a structural load, and once you know the cost of something, it becomes much harder to dismiss the person who used to provide it for free. As for me, healing came in uneven pieces. Physically, I got stronger. I went back to the museum part-time, then full-time. I stood longer at lab tables, restored a damaged Civil War navigation log, took my coffee on the museum steps in the morning sun, and slowly returned to a body that felt like mine instead of a bill my family didn't want to pay. Emotionally, the recovery was stranger. There were days I felt triumphant. There were days I grieved like somebody had died because, in a way, they had. Not my parents as living people, but the fantasy of them. The version I kept trying to earn. Letting that version go hurt more than any surgery, but it also gave me room to build something better. Naomi said one night over takeout on my couch, "You know the part that scares them most isn't what you did. It's that you learned you could leave." She was right. My revenge wasn't that I destroyed them. I didn't. Their own habits, denial, and favoritism did that work long before I stepped back. My revenge was that I finally stopped translating their cruelty into duty. I stopped volunteering my life for people who treated my pain like an inconvenience. I stopped confusing being needed with being loved. And the strangest part is that once I did, hope came back in a shape I actually trusted. Not hope that my family would transform into something they had never been. Hope that I could build a life where my worth wasn't measured by how much collapse I could absorb without complaint. So if you want the neat ending where everybody changes, where my father cries, Travis gets sober, and my mother becomes the mother I always wanted, I can't give you that. Real life is harsher and more useful than that. What I can give you is this. They finally learned what my absence costs, and I finally learned that letting people feel that cost is not cruelty. Sometimes it's the first honest thing you've done for yourself in years. Thank you for listening. The antagonist in this story is not just one person, but a toxic pattern of favoritism, selfishness, and emotional neglect represented by the parents and brother. Their actions make them deeply frustrating because they value convenience over compassion and loyalty over fairness. What makes them memorable is how realistically they show the damage a broken family dynamic can cause. Still, the most meaningful lesson is positive. Other people's cruelty should never decide your worth. Sometimes the strongest response is not revenge through anger, but growth through courage, self-respect, and boundaries. In the end, choosing yourself can be the beginning of healing, wisdom, and a better life. Again, she wasn't busy, she wasn't distracted. She was standing in our kitchen holding a cake on my 33rd birthday, singing congratulations to my younger brother on hitting 100,000 followers on his channel, while I stood there with grocery bags in my hands like I was the caterer. Nobody said happy birthday. Not once. No text, no call, no card tucked behind the toaster like when I was a kid. Just them circling him, filming on their phones, while I set down plastic bags and realized I had officially become background noise in my own family. My name is Madison Reed, and that was the exact moment something inside me snapped. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I smiled, said, "I'll get out of your way," and walked right past the cake that should have had my name on it. A few hours later, I was in my apartment, staring at my laptop, my bonus from a massive tech acquisition sitting in my account like a dare. By midnight, I had placed an order for a fully loaded Tesla worth $95,000, paid in cash. I took a screenshot of the confirmation page and posted it quietly to my private Instagram, the one my family stalked but never liked anything on. No caption. Just the car, the price, and my reflection in the screen. The next morning, my phone lit up with a call from my dad. I almost didn't pick up. When I did, his voice was shaking. "Madison, where did you get the money for a $95,000 Tesla?" he demanded. Then came the line that changed everything. "Family meeting, tomorrow, 7 p.m., everyone." I stared at my phone after the call ended and realized I wasn't scared. I was ready. They thought I was still the invisible daughter who would quietly explain herself until they felt better. They had no idea what was coming. And you, have you ever felt like a ghost in the house you grew up in, watching everyone else get celebrated while you disappear? Before I tell you what he said, and what happened after I walked out of that meeting, tell me, what time is it for you right now? And where are you watching from? I really want to see how far this story will travel. By the time my dad ordered that family meeting, I'd already spent months pretending my family's favoritism was just how it is. I lived in Seattle, worked as a senior product manager at a health tech startup, and made more money than I ever thought possible. But the Reeds back in Dallas only cared about one thing: my younger brother, the visionary content creator. They bragged about him to anyone who'd listen, while talking about my job like I was a receptionist who sometimes did computer things. The birthday incident wasn't an isolated moment. It was just the most obvious one. 2 weeks before that, I'd flown home for a quick visit. I remember scrolling through my banking app while sitting at the old dining room table and freezing at a line item on an old account I still technically shared with my parents. Transfer, $12,500. Reed Media LLC. Reed Media. My brother's little company. At the time, I wrote it off as something my dad handled for tax reasons, but that number lodged in my brain like a splinter. That splinter started throbbing after my birthday, non-party. That night, after ordering the Tesla, I couldn't sleep. Instead, I opened my laptop and started digging. My parents weren't tech-savvy, which is ironic considering how much they worshipped my brother's online career. Years ago, when I was still in grad school, I'd helped set up a shared family cloud folder for documents. They never changed the password. When I logged in, it was like opening a vault nobody expected me to touch. Old PDFs, bank statements, loan documents, tax returns. At first I skimmed, telling myself I was being paranoid. Then one file name punched the air out of my lungs. college_fund_Madison_closure.pdf. I clicked it, hands shaking. The document showed my grandparents' college fund, set up in my name when I was 10, being emptied out 7 years earlier. Authorized not by me, but by my parents, with beneficiary consent. Except nobody had asked me. The final line: remaining balance transferred to Reed Media LLC operating account. My brother's company. I scrolled further and saw the date, right around the time he'd taken a risk and rented an expensive studio downtown for his art. That studio I'd once driven him to, using my own gas money, while my mom sat in the back seat telling him, "This is what real support looks like." I thought she meant emotional. Apparently, she meant financial. I backed out of the PDF and started opening more. Monthly transfers, $2,500 here, $3,000 there. Labels like studio rent, equipment, festival fees. All from accounts my grandparents had explicitly described as, "For your master's degree, Maddie." I remembered the day I told my parents I couldn't afford to finish the master's program I'd been accepted to. My mom had sighed and said, "Well, that's adulthood. Not everyone gets to chase every dream." Meanwhile, they were wiring thousands of dollars from my supposed education fund so my brother could buy cameras and plane tickets. The worst part wasn't even the money. It was the messages I found next. Their iMessage account was linked to the same cloud. I shouldn't have opened them, but I did. Thread after thread of my brother whining, "I can't create if I'm stressed about rent. The algorithm hates me this month. I need help to stay afloat. Everyone else's parents invest in them." My mom would reply with things like, "Of course, sweetheart, we'll figure it out," and send screenshots of transfers. Once, she wrote, "We'll use the last of Maddie's grad money. She's already doing fine." I stared at that line for a full minute. She's already doing fine. Like my stability meant I was a bottomless resource. Like the years I spent working triple shifts, building a career from nothing, were proof I didn't need the very support they were throwing at my brother the second he snapped his fingers. My dad chimed in once, "This is the last time. We can't keep dipping into that fund." 2 days later, another transfer went out, twice the previous amount. My hands were cold as I sat alone in my Seattle apartment, the glow of the screen painting everything in that sickly blue light. Suddenly, the quiet humiliation of that birthday cake moment had a price tag. They hadn't just ignored my birthday. They had been erasing my future behind my back for years. What would you do if you found out your family had been bankrolling someone else's dream with money that was supposed to be yours? I closed my laptop and walked to the window. Down on the street, I watched a stranger step out of a gleaming electric car, laughing into her phone, keys dangling from her fingers like she owned the whole block. For the first time, I understood. This wasn't about a car. It was about control. They treated me like I was fine because I made it without them. They treated my brother like a fragile genius who needed constant rescue. And they thought that would never have consequences. They were wrong. The first person I told wasn't a lawyer, or a therapist, or even my parents. It was my best friend, Jordan Price, the one person who understood exactly what golden child syndrome felt like without me needing to explain it. We met at a rooftop bar overlooking downtown Seattle, the kind of place with overpriced cocktails and string lights that made everything look softer than it really was. "They used your college fund?" Jordan asked. After I dumped the whole story in front of him, laptop screenshots and all. "And then pretended they couldn't help you with grad school?" "Pretty much," I said, tracing the rim of my glass. "And apparently, I'm already doing fine, so it doesn't count as betrayal." Jordan shook his head, laughing in that bitter way you only learn after years of family damage. "My parents did the reverse," he said. "They drained everything for my education, and then told my sister to learn to hustle when she wanted to go back to school at 30. They think stability is a reward, not something you build." We sat in silence for a minute, the city humming below us. "So what are you going to do?" he asked finally. "Sue them?" "I don't know," I admitted. "Part of me wants to scorch the earth. Another part of me is tired. Plus, everyone sees them as these generous, supportive parents of a creative genius. If I come out swinging, I'll just be the bitter older sister who doesn't get art." Jordan studied me. "Okay, so maybe it doesn't start with a courtroom. Maybe it starts with you stopping the story where you're the reliable, quiet background character." I snorted. "You sound like my therapist." "Your therapist probably doesn't swear as much as I do," he said. "Look, your parents worship three things: your brother, their image, and money. You've been the one thing they take for granted. If you really want to shake the table, you have to hit them where it actually hurts. I thought about the Tesla confirmation email still sitting in my inbox. I hadn't told him about that yet. What if, I started slowly, I hit all three at once? He raised an eyebrow. I'm listening. I pulled out my phone, opened the email, and turned the screen to him. He squinted, read, then choked on his drink. You bought a Tesla? Not just a Tesla, I said. A $95,000 Tesla, paid in full. They still think I'm driving the beat-up sedan they co-signed for 8 years ago. That loan is paid off, but my dad is still listed as a contact on my insurance portal because he wanted to keep an eye on things. You know what shows up there? Understanding dawned across his face. Your new car. Exactly. The purchase, the value, the policy. All of it. He's going to see it. He already called a family meeting because he saw the price tag. They think I'm either in massive debt or doing something illegal. Jordan leaned back, a slow grin spreading. So, the girl they treated like she was broke is rolling up with a $95,000 car they didn't pay for, and they have no idea how you got it. That's poetic. I don't just want them shocked, I replied. I want them accountable. I want them to understand that every dollar they quietly siphoned away had a cost, that they trained my brother to expect rescues while expecting me to quietly endure. So what's the plan? He asked. I took a breath. Step 1. I show up to that family meeting in the Tesla, not to flex, but to make it physically impossible for them to pretend I'm the struggling, dependent daughter they've written in their heads. Step 2. I bring receipts. Literal ones. I tapped my laptop bag. Inside was a growing stack of printed statements, highlighted lines, and sticky notes. Step 3. I hesitated, then said it out loud. Step 3. I cut them off. Emotionally, financially, legally, if I have to. I've already talked to a lawyer about the college fund. I have options. Jordan nodded slowly. That's not petty. That's protective. And the car? I asked. Is it ridiculous that I used part of my acquisition bonus on something that will definitely look like revenge? Question, he said, tilting his head. If they hadn't touched your college fund, if they'd treated you and your brother equally, would this car still make sense for your life? I thought about it. The commute, the tech, the fact that I could easily afford it without touching my safety net. Yeah, I admitted. It would. I just wasn't going to let myself want it. It felt too big. Then it's not revenge, he said. It's you letting yourself have something you earned. The revenge is what you do with the truth, not what you drive. Is it really petty to turn their favorite status symbol into the mirror they've been avoiding for years? I let the question hang between us. We spent the next hour mapping things out. How I'd structure the conversation, what I would and wouldn't say, which lines I refused to cross even if they tried to bait me. You're not there to destroy them, Jordan reminded me. You're there to stop letting them destroy you quietly. When we finally left the bar, I felt something I hadn't felt in years around my family. Clarity. The car was already ordered. The money was already in my account. The screenshots were printed. All that was left was to show up. Picking up the Tesla didn't feel like a shopping trip. It felt like walking into a courtroom where I was both the defendant and the judge. The delivery center smelled like new rubber and expensive cologne. Salespeople in branded jackets floated around smiling at everyone like this was the happiest day of their lives. My delivery advisor, a guy named Ethan with movie star teeth, led me toward a sleek Model S sitting under soft lights. Madison? He asked. She's all yours. The car looked like something out of the future. Midnight silver exterior, glass roof catching the Seattle drizzle, white interior my mother would have called completely impractical, with her trademark eye roll. I'd picked that on purpose. As a teenager, I'd begged for white sneakers once and she'd lectured me about people who think they're too good for scuffs. Now here I was, stepping into a car where everything was white and intentional. Ethan walked me through the basics: how to open the door, how to start it, where the charging port was, but I barely processed the words. My brain kept skipping ahead to Saturday. Dallas, my parents' driveway, my dad's face when he saw me step out of a car he hadn't co-signed, controlled, or approved. "You okay?" Ethan asked at one point. "Most people are grinning like maniacs right now." "I'm happy," I said honestly, just thinking about the conversation this car is about to start. On the drive home, the quiet was almost unsettling. No engine roar, just a low hum and my thoughts ricocheting off the glass. I remembered every time my parents had told me they couldn't afford to help with something: textbooks, deposits, summer programs, while apparently wiring thousands to my brother because his passion couldn't wait. This car wasn't going to fix any of that, but it was going to make it impossible for them to keep pretending it hadn't happened. That night, I sat at my dining table with the keys on the wood in front of me, laptop open, documents spread out. College fund closure, transfers, those "she's already doing fine" texts. I organized everything into a slim black folder with dividers labeled education funds, transfers, messages, and options. Inside the last one was a simple letter from my lawyer explaining what legal steps I could take if I wanted to pursue it. I didn't know if I'd ever hand them that letter, but having it there, printed, made me feel less like a helpless daughter and more like a woman with choices. The next morning, my phone buzzed with an email notification from my auto insurance. Subject line: "New vehicle added to policy." I swallowed. Because my dad had insisted on setting up my first policy when I was 22, his email address was still linked as a secondary contact. I hadn't bothered changing it. Now, that laziness was part of the plan. 2 hours later, my phone rang. Your father saw an email about a Tesla," my mom said without even saying hello. "Please tell me that's a mistake." "It's not," I said calmly. "I bought a car." $95,000? Her voice went shrill on the number. "Madison, that's more than some people make in a year." "What were you thinking? Did your company do something shady? Are you in trouble?" I almost laughed. The idea that the only way I could afford something was if I'd cheated. "I'm not in trouble," I said. "I'm successful. There's a difference." She huffed. "Your father wants to talk about this. He's furious. We're having a family meeting on Saturday. You'll be here." "He already told me," I replied. "I'll be there." She paused, thrown off by how quickly I agreed. "Good," she said finally. "We just want to make sure you're not making reckless decisions. You know we worry about you." I looked at the folder on my table, the one that proved they hadn't worried much at all when it came to my future. "I know," I said. "I'll bring some things we need to talk about too." After we hung up, I sat staring at my reflection in the black screen of the TV behind the Tesla keycard on the table. Somewhere along the way, my family had decided that my competence meant they could use me as a resource without ever looking too closely at what that cost. Saturday wouldn't just be about a car, it would be about finally forcing them to look. Dallas was hotter than I remembered. The air hit me like I'd opened an oven as I pulled into my parents' neighborhood, the Tesla gliding past the same manicured lawns and identical brick houses I'd grown up around. I turned onto their street and slowed when I saw it. My brother's oversized SUV parked crookedly in the driveway, decals for his channel plastered across the back window like a mobile billboard. I pulled in behind it, positioning the Tesla so it completely blocked him in. Petty? Maybe. Satisfying? Absolutely. My parents' house looked exactly the same: white shutters, blue door, the porch swing my dad always claimed he'd get around to fixing. I sat there for a moment with my hands on the steering wheel, folder on the passenger seat, heart pounding. Then I opened the door. My mom appeared in the doorway as if she'd been waiting. Her eyes went straight to the car. They widened, then narrowed. "You really bought it," she said, stepping outside. "Please tell me you didn't finance this on some insane interest rate." "Hi to you too," I said, forcing a small smile. "And no, I paid cash." That stopped her cold. "Cash," she repeated. "Madison, where did you even get that kind of money?" Before I could answer, my brother stepped out, squinting at the sun, phone in hand. "Whoa," he said. "You rented this? For the weekend or for content? That's actually kinda sick." "It's mine," I replied. "I bought it." He laughed like I'd told a joke. "Right. Okay." My dad came out last, jaw set, expression grim, like he was walking into a disciplinary hearing at his office. His gaze tracked from the Tesla logo to my face, then to the folder in my hand. "Inside," he said. "We'll talk inside." The living room hadn't changed since high school. Same beige couch, same framed photos on the mantel. My brother on stage, my brother holding a camera, my brother surrounded by friends at some festival. There were a couple of my graduation photos tucked in the corner, slightly crooked, like they'd been added out of obligation. We all sat. I placed the folder on the coffee table but didn't open it yet. "Madison," my dad began, leaning forward, elbows on his knees. "A car like that is a massive financial commitment. We're concerned. Are you in debt? Are you gambling? Is there something going on you're not telling us?" "Wow, thanks for the vote of confidence," I said. "No, I'm not gambling. I work. I get paid well. My company was acquired. I got equity. I used money I earned to buy something I wanted and could afford." "You could have talked to us," my mom said. "Big purchases they're serious. We could have helped you think it through." The irony almost knocked me over. "You're right," I said quietly. "We should have talked before making big financial decisions that affected me, like, say, emptying my college fund." Silence dropped over the room like a curtain. My mom blinked. My dad's forehead furrowed. My brother looked up from his phone. "What are you talking about?" my dad asked slowly. I opened the folder and slid the first document toward him. The college fund closure, PDF. "This," I said. "You remember signing this?" He picked it up, eyes scanning the lines, something like recognition and dread creeping over his face. My mom leaned closer, reading. Her hand flew to her mouth. "Where did you get this?" she whispered. "Where you left it," I replied. "In the shared cloud. The one I set up when I was 22. The one you apparently forgot I still had access to." My brother shifted on the couch. "I thought this was about the car," he said. "Why are we talking about some old account?" "Because that old account was supposed to pay for my master's degree," I snapped, the calm slipping. "And instead, it paid for your studio." My dad bristled. "We discussed this," he said. "At the time, you didn't seem interested in going back to school. Your job was going well. Your brother needed support?" I cut in. "Yeah, I saw that word a lot in your messages." I pulled out a stack of printed screenshots and placed them next to the PDF. "You didn't discuss anything with me. You decided I was fine, and that meant you could repurpose what was mine. And then you lied about why you couldn't help when I said I couldn't afford the program." My mom started shaking her head. "We didn't lie," she said weakly. We were under pressure. Your brother was struggling. His art was his life. We didn't want him to give up just because of money." "So you took mine," I said. "Without asking." My brother rolled his eyes. "You're overreacting," he said. "It's not like they stole from you. We're family. Money is fluid." Easy to say when the fluid is flowing in your direction, I shot back. How much did the camera cost, Dylan? The one you bought the week this fund was closed? He blinked. I don't remember. I do, I said, sliding another page across the table. Bank transfer, date, amount. Because I looked it up. The room was hot. My heart was pounding. But there was no going back now. My dad's voice hardened. Is this what this is about? He asked. You bought that car to… what? Rub it in our faces? Make us feel guilty? No, I said, meeting his eyes. I bought that car because I wanted it and I could afford it. I brought these. I tapped the documents. To make you feel accountable. For a few seconds, nobody spoke. The only sound was the faint hum of the air conditioner and my brother's phone buzzing with some notification he ignored for once. Then my mom straightened, smoothing her shirt like she could iron out the tension. We never meant to hurt you, she said. We knew you'd land on your feet. You always do. Your brother, he's different. Sensitive, creative. The world is harder on people like him. The unfairness of that made my eyes sting. You mean the world is harder on people who don't have a safety net they feel entitled to? I said. I was bartending, taking freelance gigs, doing anything to pay rent and loans, and you told me it built character. He complains about rent for 2 weeks and you dip into my fund. My dad snapped. Watch your tone, Madison. We are still your parents. I laughed without humor. Exactly, parents. Which means you had a responsibility to both of your children, not just the one you thought was special. Dylan finally exploded. Oh my God, are you seriously jealous of me? He demanded. You have a big girl job and a fancy car, and you're sitting here whining about an account from years ago? You sound pathetic. Something in me went very, very still. Jealous? I repeated. No, I'm angry. There's a difference. I'm angry that you've been treated like a project while I've been treated like a reliable appliance. I'm angry that every sacrifice I made was dismissed because it was boring and practical, while every impulsive decision you made was framed as bravery. Don't talk to your brother like that, my mom snapped. He works hard. Content creation is… I know, I cut in. Work. I'm not saying he doesn't. I'm saying he's never been allowed to stand on his own 2 feet because you keep patting the floor under him with resources that were supposed to be shared. I turned to Dylan. Do you even know where the money for your first year of rent came from? He opened his mouth, closed it, frowned. They helped, he said, because they believe in me. They helped with my name, I said. I slid another document out. An old loan agreement. You see this? You co-signed a personal loan when I was 19, Dad. I thought it was for my car. It wasn't. It was for a business expense. Your words in the note field. My dad snatched the paper, eyes scanning frantically. His face went pale. You were a legal adult, he muttered. It was easier this way. Your credit was clean. We always made the payments. That's not the point, I said. You used my identity for a loan without telling me what it was for. If you'd missed a payment, my credit would have been trashed. For something I didn't even choose. My mom's voice was small now. We were trying to keep the family afloat, she whispered. Between your loans, your brother's projects, the house. It was a lot. And instead of talking to me like an adult, you treated me like a backup plan with a social security number. I said, do you have any idea how that feels? If your own brother looked you in the face and told you your pain was a joke, would you still call that family? The question thudded in my chest as Dylan scoffed again. You're being dramatic, he said. So they helped me more. Big deal. You turned out fine. You have a Tesla now. Why are you still mad? I stared at him, realizing in real time just how deep the problem ran. He truly didn't see it. Why would he? He'd been raised to believe that other people's sacrifices were just the background music to his dreams. I'm mad, I said slowly. Because you think fine is the same as unharmed. Because you think money that was supposed to be mine was a group resource that everyone could vote on except me. Because you've never had to stand in a room and feel yourself disappear while your family sings over you to celebrate someone else. This isn't about the car. It's not even just about the money. It's about the story you all decided to live in, where I'm the stable one who doesn't need anything, and you're the fragile genius who deserves everything. My dad rubbed his temples. Okay, he said. What do you want, Madison? Do you want us to apologize? To pay you back? To stop helping your brother? Just say it. I already did the math, I said, sliding a final sheet across the table. A simple summary my lawyer had helped me draft. Between the college fund, the loan under my name, and the transfers clearly labeled as coming from my accounts or funds designated for me, the total comes to just under $100,000. Funny number, right? My mom flinched. The car, she whispered. That's why you spent that much. To match it. No, I replied. I spent that much because that's what the car cost and I could afford it. The match is just poetic. Here's what I want. I want you to pay me back what was taken without my knowledge. I don't care if it takes time. I don't care if you have to make payments. But I want acknowledgement that it was wrong. And I want you to stop funding Dylan's life like he's a helpless child. If you choose to keep doing it, that's your decision. But it will be without any access to me, my accounts, or anything that has my name on it. My dad bristled. You can't just cut us off, he said. We're your family. I met his gaze steadily. Watch me, I said. The next hour was ugly. There were tears. My mom's. There was shouting. My dad's. There was sulking and sarcasm. My brother's specialty. They called me ungrateful, accused me of trying to punish them for being human, reminded me of every time they'd shown up to a recital or sent a care package when I was sick. I didn't deny any of it. I just kept bringing the conversation back to the same point. Love doesn't make betrayal disappear. Love is the reason betrayal hurts so much. In the end, my dad pushed back from the coffee table and said, We can't just conjure up that kind of money. We have a mortgage. We have obligations. Your brother can get a job, I said. A real one, like the rest of us. Dylan scoffed. This is my job. Then make it pay your bills, I replied. Or scale down. Or move back home. But stop acting like the universe, and our parents, owe you a lifestyle. That last part landed. I saw it in the flicker of anger on his face, the way his mouth opened and closed without sound. For the first time, maybe ever, someone in the family had said out loud that his dreams were not a get-out-of-reality-free card. We'll think about it, my dad said finally. We need time. Take all the time you want, I replied, standing. But understand this. Until you decide, things change now. I've already moved all my accounts out of anything you have access to. I've removed your email from my insurance, Dad. I've spoken with a lawyer about the loan and the fund. If you choose not to pay me back, I won't drag you into court. That's not who I want to be. But I will step back. No more emergency calls about your Wi-Fi. No more last-minute favors. No more pretending I'm not hurt so you can feel like good parents. My mom's eyes filled. You're really going to walk away over money? She whispered. No, I said softly. I'm walking away over what the money showed me. That when you had to choose between protecting me and protecting the story you told yourselves about supporting your gifted child, you chose the story. I'm just choosing myself now. I picked up the folder, turned, and walked out. My dad called my name once. I didn't stop. Outside, the Texas sun glared off the Tesla's hood as if it were spotlighting me. I got in, closed the door, and the sudden quiet felt like stepping into a different life. I wish I could say things magically changed overnight. They didn't. For a while, my parents doubled down. They sent long texts about misunderstandings and family sticking together. I responded once, repeating my terms calmly, then stopped replying when the messages turned manipulative. My brother posted vague comments online about toxic people who only care about money, which his followers interpreted as ex-friends and ex-girlfriends. He never mentioned me by name. The funny thing about boundaries is that at first they feel like walls, but if you hold them long enough, they start to feel like doors you can choose to open or close. 3 months later, my dad called. I almost ignored it. Instead, I answered and listened. His voice sounded older, tired. "We sold the lake house," he said without preamble. "Your mother cried for 2 days, but we paid off what we owed from your fund. I emailed you the records and a transfer confirmation." I opened my laptop while he talked. There it was. A wire transfer for the exact amount my lawyer had calculated, broken down across a few payments. Attached were receipts of them closing out a savings account and selling the vacation property that had been their pride for years. "We can't fix what we did," he said quietly, "but we can try to make it right, moving forward." "What about Dylan?" I asked. He sighed. "We told him we can't keep covering his rent and expenses. He's back at home for now, working part-time at a production company. He's not thrilled, but he'll adjust." "He should," I said. "He's talented, but talent doesn't excuse taking and taking." There was a pause. "You were right," my dad said. "We thought you were okay, so we turned you into a resource. We didn't see you. Not really. I'm sorry, kiddo." The word kiddo made my throat tighten. "I'm not ready to come home for Christmas," I said honestly. "I don't think I can sit at that table and pretend everything's fine yet." "I'm not asking you to," he replied. "I'm just hoping that someday you'll drive that space car of yours back to your old man and let him buy you dinner." I smiled despite myself. "We'll see," I said. After we hung up, I went down to the parking garage and slid into the driver's seat of the Tesla. The car didn't feel like revenge anymore. It felt like a reminder that my hard work had value, that I was allowed to enjoy what I'd earned without apologizing for it, and that drawing a line had forced the people who hurt me to finally look at what they'd done. Here's the thing I want anyone listening to this to hear. This isn't a story about buying an expensive car to get back at your family. It's about realizing that blind favoritism doesn't just spoil the golden child, it erases the others. It teaches one person they deserve endless rescue and another that they don't deserve to ask for anything at all. If you grew up like me, always fine, always the strong one, you're allowed to say, "Actually, I needed help too." You're allowed to ask where the money went. You're allowed to say no when people treat your stability like an excuse to exploit you. And you're allowed to build a life where your worth isn't measured by how much you can quietly endure. I won't tell you to go out and buy a $95,000 Tesla. Honestly, most of the time, the bravest thing you can do isn't spending money. It's setting boundaries. It's going to therapy. It's having the hard conversation, even when your voice shakes, and choosing a future where you're no longer the ghost in your own story. So now I'll ask you, would you ever buy a luxury car just to prove your worth? Or would you choose a different way to stand up for yourself? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear your story. Thank you for listening. From my point of view, this story isn't really about a $95,000 Tesla. It's about finally refusing to be the strong one who quietly accepts unfair treatment. Madison doesn't destroy her family. She forces them to see the hidden cost of favoritism and teaches herself to value her own hard work and boundaries. The real victory here is emotional education, learning that you're allowed to say no, even to the people you love. If you were in her place, Would you confront your family the way she did? Or would you choose a quieter way to protect your peace? And why?